Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. If you're interested in global politics, or maybe you're even studying for those UPSC exams, well, then you definitely come to the right place.
Definitely.
Today we're going deep on green politics, which is something you see more and more in international relations.
Yeah, it's everywhere these days.
To help us make sense of it all, we've got this text here that really breaks down two main ways of thinking about the environment: reformist ecology and radical ecology.
Kind of like asking ourselves, are we just going to fine-tune the system, or are we going to completely rebuild it from the ground up?
I like that. That's a good way to put it. And just so everyone's on the same page, maybe we can start with a little background.
Sure.
This text kicks things off by comparing two completely different worldviews.
Right. It starts with anthropocentrism.
Anthropocentrism.
Basically, the idea that humans are, well, the center of the universe. It's like the classic humans first kind of thinking that's been around forever. And then you have ecology, which comes in and says, hold on a second, all forms of life are connected.
So it's like we're shifting from thinking we're the main characters to realizing we're just part of a much bigger story.
Yeah, exactly. And that shift in perspective is really what fuels the whole debate between those two approaches we were talking about.
Reformist and radical.
Exactly. So reformist ecology is kind of like it sounds. It acknowledges the environmental problems that we're facing, but tries to find solutions within the systems we already have.
Got it. So one of the big ideas they talk about is this concept of limits to growth. Sounds pretty straightforward. What does it actually mean?
Well, think about it like this. You can't just keep growing forever without hitting some serious roadblocks. Resources are finite, and the planet can only handle so much. It's like the Aral Sea disaster. For decades, unsustainable cotton farming in the region completely drained the sea, which caused huge ecological and economic damage.
Yeah, that's a stark reminder that unchecked economic growth can have some pretty devastating consequences.
Exactly. And reformist ecology sees sustainable development as a key part of the solution, right?
Right, so it's about finding a way to keep growing without completely trashing the planet in the process.
Yeah, finding that balance.
Getting rich more slowly, as some people put it.
Yeah, there you go. But here's something that might surprise you. Reformist ecology actually has its roots in utilitarian philosophy.
Really? Utilitarian philosophy, how does that work?
Well, utilitarianism is all about maximizing happiness and well-being.
Right, for the greatest number of people.
Exactly. And philosophers like John Stuart Mill argued that future generations have just as much right to happiness as we do.
So basically, polluting the planet today is like stealing happiness from future generations.
It's a utilitarian argument for taking care of the environment. It's a really cool way to think about it.
I like that. So what are some concrete solutions that reformists propose? What's in their toolkit, so to speak?
Well, they tend to favor approaches that work within the existing framework of capitalism and global governance. Things like market-based solutions like green taxes, which penalize polluters and incentivize businesses to adopt greener practices.
So using market forces to try to nudge things in a more sustainable direction, making it more expensive to pollute and rewarding companies for being eco-friendly.
Exactly. And they also put a lot of faith in human ingenuity. They think we can develop green technologies to solve the problems that technology often creates.
So things like renewable energy, energy-efficient buildings, sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
And then there's international cooperation, right? We're talking about global agreements to tackle climate change, transboundary pollution.
Absolutely, because these problems don't stop at borders, right?
Exactly. It takes a global effort to deal with global problems. So to sum it up, reformist ecology is all about pragmatism, working within the systems we already have.
It's not about burning it all down, but rather finding ways to make those systems work for the environment.
So kind of like renovating the house instead of demolishing it and starting over. Yeah. All right, so we've got a pretty good handle on the reformist side of things, but now let's get into the radical stuff. If reformists are all about working within the system, radical ecology seems like it wants to, well, flip the table.
Yeah, you could say that. They believe the real problem isn't just our policies or technologies, it's the very structure of our society.
It's like they're saying our economic systems, our power structures, even our cultural values are all contributing to the environmental mess we're in.
Exactly. They argue that we need a fundamental shift in how we organize ourselves if we want to truly fix things.
So it's not about swapping out a few light bulbs, it's about rewiring the whole system.
Right. And within radical ecology, you've got a few different schools of thought.
Right.
One of the big ones is social ecology, which basically links environmental problems to well, social problems.
Makes sense. It's like the way we treat each other is reflected in how we treat the planet.
Exactly. Exploitation and domination, whether it's towards people or the environment, it all stems from the same root.
So if we want to heal our relationship with nature, we need to address social injustices as well.
Exactly. And within social ecology, you've got several branches, each focusing on a specific root cause of ecological harm.
Okay, so like what are some examples?
Well, there's eco-socialism, for example.
Eco-socialism.
Yeah, they point the finger at capitalism.
That makes sense. Capitalism is all about maximizing profit, exploiting resources. Doesn't sound very sustainable in the long run.
Right. They argue that capitalism's constant need for growth just isn't compatible with a healthy planet. They advocate for a more equitable and sustainable economic system, one that prioritizes people and the environment over profit.
Okay, so that's eco-socialism. What else is there?
Then you've got eco-anarchism, which takes a different approach.
Eco-anarchism. Anarchy. So they want to, like, abolish all governments.
Well, it's not quite that simple. Eco-anarchists see hierarchy and authority as the main culprits. They believe that any form of top-down control, whether it's the state or big corporations, inevitably leads to domination both of people and nature.
So more power to the people, less power to the powers that be.
Yeah, that's the general idea. They advocate for decentralized, self-governing communities where people have more control over their lives and their environment. They see this as a path to a more just and ecologically balanced society.
Interesting. So we've got eco-socialism and eco-anarchism. Any other branches we should know about?
Yeah, there's also ecofeminism, which adds another layer to the discussion.
Ecofeminism. I've heard of that.
Ecofeminism links environmental destruction to patriarchy, the system of male dominance that you see in so many societies.
So they're saying that the same forces that oppress women also lead to the exploitation of nature.
Exactly. They point out how traditional gender roles often associate men with control and domination, while women are linked to nature and nurturing. So they argue that challenging patriarchal structures is key to achieving ecological balance.
So dismantling those harmful power dynamics, not just in human society, but also in our relationship with the environment.
Right. All these branches of social ecology are basically saying that you can't solve the environmental crisis without addressing social injustices.
You got to fix the system from the inside out.
Exactly. But then you've got deep ecology, which takes things even further.
Deep ecology. That sounds intense.
It is. It's not just about critiquing social structures. It calls for a total transformation in how we see ourselves and our place in the universe.
So if social ecology is about redesigning the car, deep ecology is asking if we even need a car in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They're questioning the whole paradigm.
Wow, that's pretty deep. So they're rejecting the whole humans are the center of everything idea.
Exactly. They're all about ecocentrism. It's the view that all living things and even ecosystems themselves have intrinsic value. It doesn't matter if they're useful to humans or not.
So it's not about putting a price tag on nature or seeing it as a resource to be exploited. It's about recognizing its inherent worth, its right to exist.
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're just one part of a much larger web of life, not separate from it or superior to it.
And where do they get these ideas from?
Well, deep ecology draws inspiration from a lot of different places. You've got quantum physics, which emphasizes interconnectedness.
Right.
You've got Eastern spiritual traditions that talk about oneness with nature.
Okay, yeah.
And even the Gaia hypothesis, which views the Earth as a self-regulating living organism.
So they're pulling from science and spirituality to create a new vision of how we should relate to nature. But how does that translate into concrete action? What do deep ecologists actually want us to do?
Well, they advocate for a fundamental shift in our values and lifestyles. Less consumerism, more simplicity, reconnecting with nature.
So it's not just about changing policies, but changing our hearts and minds, questioning what we think progress and a good life really mean.
Exactly. It's about rediscovering our place in the web of life. And for deep ecologists, that's the only way to truly solve the environmental crisis. It's not about quick fixes. It's about a profound transformation in our relationship with nature.
Okay, so we've got the reformists working within the system and the radicals pushing for something completely different. It's a pretty wide range of ideas. But how do these approaches actually play out in the real world? What are the pros and cons of each?
Well, I think it's fair to say that both approaches have their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with the reformists. What are some of the advantages of working within the system?
Well, for one, it's practical. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're just trying to make the current system a little less harmful.
Right, so it's more likely to actually get things done.
Yeah, and it can lead to some pretty quick results. Like, you can implement a carbon tax and see a reduction in emissions relatively quickly.
So it's good for tackling those urgent environmental issues where we need to see action, like right now.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, it might not be enough in the long run.
Because it's not addressing the root cause of the problem.
Right. It's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Okay, so it might be delaying a much bigger crisis down the line. And what about radical ecology? It seems like it gets to the heart of the matter, but are those solutions even realistic?
Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, one of the strengths of radical ecology is that it's bold. It dares to imagine a truly sustainable future, one that's not based on endless growth and consumption.
It's thinking big picture, long-term solutions.
Exactly. But the problem is, it can seem kind of, well, unrealistic to some people.
Because it requires such a massive shift in how we do things.
Exactly. It's not just about tweaking the system, it's about overhauling it. And that's not going to be easy.
There's going to be a lot of resistance from people who benefit from the current system.
Yeah, and to be fair, some of their solutions might be hard to put into practice, especially on a large scale.
It would take a massive amount of political will and social change.
Absolutely. But for our listeners out there who are prepping for those UPSC exams, understanding this whole debate is super important.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This stuff comes up all the time in international relations.
Yeah, you might get asked to compare and contrast these approaches, analyze their implications in the real world.
Exactly. Knowing these concepts inside and out can really give you an edge in those exams.
But it's not just about acing a test. This is important for everyone, you know?
Absolutely.
Whether you're a policymaker, an activist, or just someone who cares about the planet.
It's about understanding where you stand in this debate and how you can contribute to building a better future.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to think about. We've looked at these two very different ways of tackling the environmental crisis. Working within the system versus transforming it.
So which one resonates with you more?
Do you think we can solve these problems with a few tweaks and adjustments? Or do we need a more radical change in our values and our lifestyles? It's a question with no easy answers, but it's one that's going to shape global politics for years to come.
It's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
Exactly. So keep learning, keep talking about these issues, and keep pushing for a more sustainable future. And hey, if you enjoyed today's deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more thought-provoking conversations, just like this one. Until next time, stay curious.